car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hi there, welcome. You are watching The Attorneys. I'm Mark Franklin, and the topic of this show is about college students and the legal trouble they may face on and off campus as we get into that. But before we get into the heat of things, we want to remind you, as we begin the show, and as always, attorneys of Hollis Wright are standing by right now. They man the phones throughout the show. All you have to do is call 1-844-LAW-TALK. It's that simple. And you'll get someone from Hollis Wright to answer the phone for a free and confidential call. So go ahead and do that right now as they man the phones. We've got top guy right here in the show with us, Josh Wright. Good to have you, buddy.
I like that top guy. I would take that as an introduction every day. That's good. That's good stuff. You doing good?
I'm doing great.
Good. All right. So we're doing a show that's called Round Two. Josh Swords, of course, a friend to our show who's been on several times. He does a really, really good job of unwrapping this topic, which basically is kind of what he calls college crimes, but it's issues that affect a lot of us who have kids that are graduating from high school, going into college. He's in a college town. He sees this on a daily basis. So, Josh, first of all, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being on.
Always glad to be here.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
how did you even come up with this topic?
Well,
this does not surprise me with you, but this is a good topic for you.
Well, it's just, being in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and practicing law there, and of course, with my history, I played football there, back in the day. It's getting longer years now. We've done this about third time on the attorneys, but the years keep passing, but I still somewhat remember it, playing for Coach Stallings and Coach Dubose, but, and then spent 5 years with the DA's office there in town, and then, of course, started my own firm, and we're coming in about year 18, 19, so I've done a thing or two. And throughout my career doing defense work and representing a lot of these college students, I just kind of came up with this category of things such as minor possessions and public intoxes and disorderly conducts and things of that nature that you just really see in a group of 18 to 22-year-olds there in Tuscaloosa, which is also you see on a lot of campuses throughout Alabama.
You mentioned a couple issues. Tell me trends that you see now in college of things that are happening where kids are getting into trouble that you end up having to step in and try and help.
Yeah, the college experience is, as they say, well-rounded. Yeah. There is an educational aspect to it, but we've got a pretty serious party life, and that goes whether you're at University of Alabama, whether you're at Auburn University, you got Jacksonville State, you got UAB, and you've got Stillman there right there in Tuscaloosa. So when you see students coming, they're coming from all across the nation now. We got folks in University of Alabama from California and from New York and even through Michigan. And so when they do come for a well-rounded experience, and they're there for their education, but there's also a large social aspect. We've got what used to be back in our days, the Strip, which was a small kind of location, but now even the campus footprint has extended out to downtown areas. We got a place called Timerson, and even some other places around where college students gather. And so, that's kind of where things that happen in those areas, and it just came to see that it was a lot of college students, and that's kind of how I came up with the idea of college crime.
When you put kids away from home for the first time, for many of them, with potential substances. We've done a lot of shows on substances, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, other substances. In an environment where they're all together, you're going to have issues that arise. And Josh really fills that gap and helps.
He does, and his background really helps out a lot. When I think about the students being on campus, period, when our kids go away, we get concerned, we're worried all day long, all night long, we worry about, but they usually do the right thing. Does the student athlete add another dimension or another element to what's happening?
Oh, wow, good question. It was, and not to kind of pick on things that I knew just coming up, but, when Coach Stallings was there, obviously he ruled with an iron fist, that we didn't have too many issues. But, you see a lot of young folks coming up that have more latitude than we were given in our age. And even in the football setting, you know, there were some times when even the football team was a little loose in how they acted, and there were instances that we had to handle that were out in public, so to speak, that we weren't proud of, and it does make a more of a heightened faction, especially how big college football is nowadays. You know, it makes the headlines usually within 24, 48 hours. Obviously, with Coach Saban coming, a lot changed, and you know, he kept a strict program, and we didn't really have those issues. Sometimes they do come still, you know, and what we try to do, or what I try to do when we handle those cases, is try to get them resolved as fast as possible, as quiet as possible, with as little of a result or outcome that's a negative outcome as we can. And that's kind of how I handle all my cases. You know, we try to get it there as fast as possible, get it as sealed and confidential as quick as possible, and make the easiest, fastest outcome to get back on a positive track.
And Josh, I would imagine a lot of times you're communicating with an adult, a parent, who's saying, kind of throwing their hands up in the air saying, hey, look, I didn't expect this to happen. Now we're in this situation. What do we do? You're really lead guiding and directing them as much as you are as the student a lot of times.
100%. You know, since I've been on the show this last, you know, I've got my own child in college now. So Caroline's just finished her freshman year at the University of Alabama, and she's a sophomore now, Delta Zeta sorority. So, you know, trying to keep her on the right path. But absolutely, these parents send their child, I've called them a child, their young person, student off to have this experience. And like most parents, all we do is dream for the greatest and the best for our children. But in reality, things do happen. And it's amazing. Well, it's not amazing. It just shows the love that parents have, even in negative things. It shocks them. They can't believe it. And usually on the initial talk, their world's rocked. But the good thing about being there in the university and being there within the college setting and having the knowledge and the experience I have, I'm usually able to put a lot of that to rest, even on an initial phone call.
How do you handle, and really it's got to be more related to how do the judges handle this locally? Are they trying to work with these kids that are first-time offenders to get them on the right path, to give them some deferred prosecution if it's possible, to try and keep things off the record for the first time? I mean, and I'm not saying there's a pass. Everyone has to answer to the law, but point being is, are they trying to use deferred prosecutions in a way where these kids can have that mistake, be given that one opportunity, and then move forward?
100%. You know, I feel that most of the justice systems we have throughout Alabama do have that kind of incentive to give a first offender, or especially a young person who's never been in trouble before, an opportunity. And you see that a lot throughout the state. I think Tuscaloosa, because of the amount of numbers we see involving young folks in a criminal court, whether it be a municipal court or a district court in the Tuscaloosa County Courthouse or even the circuit court, our judges have a special kind of understanding, because we do see so much, as to weigh when a person really deserves a second chance or an opportunity. And I think we're special in that, just because we see it a lot in Tuscaloosa County with the university be there, and much like Lee County, you know, where Auburn is as well.
For sure.
You know, Josh, as I was thinking about this and listening to you, and we talked about the student-athlete element, the fact that you're at a university, does that also add another element from the standpoint that the university has a code of conduct and how they expect you to conduct yourself as a student, and then you get in trouble, so you have the law enforcement side, but you also have the university to deal with as well.
100%. And you know, and being a student athlete myself, I understood we almost had two code of conduct. We had what the university required of you. We really had three, as Coach Stallings would say. You had what the university required of you, and then you had what coach required of you, and then you had what your mom and dad required of you. And you know, and that was a lot from a student athlete.
And they use that.
Yeah, from a student athlete standpoint, that's a lot of conduct you get in charge of. But you know, one thing that I've seen, and really, I guess it came around probably in the last 15, 17 years, was the university, even though when we have a young person who gets a criminal charge, whether it's a ticketable offense such as an MIP or a fake ID, or even something as serious as a felony drug arrest. We used to, as attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, we could handle that strictly in the courthouse. And one of my biggest jobs was to get that thing a youthful offender or sealed as fast as I could so nobody else would find out about it. And about 16, 17 years ago, the university started really playing a role in its student life. And part of that, they came up with the Office of Student Conduct. And that's a kind of an overseeing division of the university that falls under student life, that has kind of checks and oversee on when negative things happen to students, such as getting arrested for any type of crime.
I know we're going to break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how Josh handles these cases when they walk in his door, kind of what the process is and how he explains to someone, hey, here's what you're looking at, here's the process that we're going to use, that kind of stuff. I think it'll be important.
And I just want to say, with all of us being parents, the code of conduct that matters the most is the one that we set.
Yes, sir.
And that's the one, if you do it right, you won't have to worry about the others, right?
That's exactly right.
That's exactly all right. So thanks for putting that into the
Wish
conversation.
everybody followed that forever.
Exactly. Yeah. And we want to thank you again for joining us, of course. And we told you at the beginning that we've got attorneys at Hollis Wright manning the phones right now at 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can make that call. It's a simple call. It's a free call. It's a confidential call. We've got a great show lined up for you. We're just getting started here. Love for you to stick around. Go ahead and call someone else and tell them to join the show. It's a great one. We've got Josh and Josh. This is the show you want to be with. Stay with us. We'll be back with the attorneys in just a few.
Here's some good information from our firm to you. Hollis Wright recently launched the Law Talk podcast. With podcasts becoming so popular, this will be a simple way to provide our loyal viewers with more opportunities to access information about important legal topics and to learn more about our firm and how we can help you if the need ever arises. There are many ways to access the Law Talk podcast. You can simply scan the QR code on your screen. Also, episodes are always available on the Hollis Wright YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Just search up Hollis Wright in the Law Talk podcast. Don't wait, take advantage and listen today. Thanks for watching The Attorneys, and we know you'll enjoy the Law Talk podcast.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
Addiction kills hope.
But at Bradford, it all changes here.
Experience the difference
that proven treatment can make.
Find recovery. Find community.
At Bradford.
And welcome back. You are watching The Attorneys as we're talking about college crimes. But as we do that, before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you that there's so many ways you can get in contact with Hollis Wright. You can scan that QR code on the screen, and you can reach someone by doing that. We also have the 1-844-LAW-TALK, that number, 1-844-LAW-TALK, and someone standing by to take your call. It's a free and confidential call. This is a fascinating conversation, and as a parent, I'm sure a lot of parents at home really paying attention to the types of things that can happen on a college campus.
Yeah, and you know, let's talk a little bit about, like, what is a parent and what is a student in for if they have an event that happens on campus and they need to come to you, Josh. What's the process that you normally use for those?
Well, a lot of times, you know, and a lot of it, I think, depends on kind of what the situation is. You know, if a student gets something that I deem more a violation of the college crimes, like a MIP or a fake ID or a ticketable offense, open beverage, something of that nature, it's really a lot more calm. You know, they'll reach out to me either by email or my website or phone, and we just make a normal appointment. And a lot of times the students obviously are there in Tuscaloosa with me, and the parents are sometimes far away. So we set up phone conferences. We've got Zoom through my office, and I try to include the parents as much as I can. I mean, obviously you got to respect the confidentiality between the client, which would be the student. But you know, usually if they're good and their permission, you know, I try to include a parent as much as possible. It just helps with the situation as a whole, as well as getting through the situation and a positive outcome. There are times though that cases such as DUIs or disorderly conducts or things of those nature have an arrest, a formal arrest, and the student person's taken to jail. And that's when things are kind of in panic mode. You know, moms and dads these days, a lot like myself with Caroline, you know, we've got Life 360. I can see when she goes eats and where she sleeps and what time she gets to class and things of that nature. And when it starts pinging from the Tuscaloosa County Jail, you know, moms and dads in California, New York, or even in Birmingham or Tuscaloosa start panicking. And, you know, I make myself pretty available to most folks. It feels like I've done this now for 18 years. You know, it's like Matthew McConaughey. You know, I keep getting older and the freshman class stays the same age year after year. So, you know, people know pretty much where I'm at. And so when they do see that their child or young person's in that county jail, it really does make them hit panic mode. And I try to be there for that. And I understand that. And the first thing, obviously, we try to do is get them back to their dorm, apartment, or the people they know. You know, it's a scary, I've never been in jail, thank goodness, but I've been down there plenty of times and seen the looks of college students when they come out. And I feel the need to be there for that, not just for them in the situation, but for the parent who's far away, who sent their child to university. And so that's really, you know, the difference between the two, and I do try to make myself accessible, try to help dull that shock and awe.
What do you see trends-wise? Like what? And I know over time it's probably changed, but what are common trends now? Like we've done a show recently on hemp versus marijuana. What's now legal? What's illegal? I mean, what are you seeing consistently in a university town like this? You know that you're in. That is maybe a trend you've kind of seen? Yeah,
you know, for a long time, obviously, the underage drinking, the MIPs, the open containers, fake IDs, that's really been something that we've dealt with. DUIs, as we've talked about previously, have come down. A lot of that credit's given to golf carts being available like Joyride, and then obviously Uber, and then some other companies have come in that do kind of a ride sharing, a group thing that a lot of the sororities and fraternities. And so it's a positive that we've seen less DUIs. One thing we've seen here lately that in the change of the law, it deals with tobacco and vaping. You know, for a while, the age was kind of what we grew up with, 19, in order to buy tobacco products or these e-cigarette type devices. Well, the laws here changed about 2021 to raise that age from 19 to 21. And so you've got young people here at the university, and some of them do partake in smoking tobacco or cigarettes, or now really these vape pens. And I don't know if you've seen them. They're hot pink, and you can see them from across the room. And of course, they give a huge puff of smoke. Right. So if you can imagine these young folks who are using those items and not under the new law old enough to use those items, law enforcement on the Strip or patrolling high social areas such as Temerson downtown, it's going to be an easy thing for them to see. And so we've really seen more police interaction with college students who are doing those vaping e-cigarettes, because it's not hard for a cop to see it across the street or even down the road. And then when you see that, then you start getting into other probable cause for charges such as the underage drinking, and then we get into fake IDs. So that's one of the new trends I've seen as far as college crimes, is the change in the tobacco and e-cigarette law, that raising that age to 21 kind of makes young people who are coming to college at 18, 19 years old big targets.
And that's the thing. When you think about this, Art, like you've got kids that are 18 trying to be 25-year-olds, right, as a freshman in college, that are not going to be legal for 3 years, engaging in things that you are going to be legal at some stage by the time you're a junior and senior, but you're not going to be your freshman, sophomore year, probably part of your junior year. And so you can imagine how law enforcement struggles with that when you've got 18, 19, 20-year-old kids doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, and that can create a mess.
You're right. Not only law enforcement struggling with that, what about the student struggling with how they should deal with law enforcement if they're approached? You talk about how easy it would be for a law officer to spot the vaping devices and things of that nature, but how should the student conduct themselves when they're approached by the officer?
Good question.
Well, always with respect. When I talk to the fraternities and sororities, or even when I talk to the football team, we talk about interaction with law enforcement. We've got 4 different law enforcement agencies in just a short area in Tuscaloosa. We're not a big town, not a big city, but we've got 4 law enforcement agents that can be there at any time. And so there's going to be interaction, whether it's a positive interaction or a negative. But either way, it's always with respect. But at the same time, I try to teach responsibility. I try to teach control to these people, when they're out in public, even if they're not doing the right things. But I also try to say, know your rights. You don't have one of the fundamental rights is not to incriminate yourself, the right to remain silent. And that's one that's kind of difficult when you've got a 20-year-old who thinks he's 25-year-old out on the strip at 1:30 in the morning after a long football game and a long night to try to keep his silence and control himself. But the main thing we try to do is obviously I talk about respect, but at the same time being responsible for yourself, that hopefully you don't get into those interactions with law enforcement.
I know we're going to break, and we're probably past due to go to break, but when we come back, let's unwrap some of these things, and I've got some one-hitter questions I want to ask Josh to try and explain some things that I would question in college.
That's good stuff. I can tell you've come to the right place. If you have any doubt about that, you want one of these Joshes to handle your case if you run into some trouble. So we want to remind you, though, we've got attorneys at Hollis Wright standing by to answer your call. We don't have much more left in this show, and they only man the call throughout the show. So make sure you make that call right now, 1-844-LAW-TALK, 1-844-LAW-TALK for a free and confidential call with Hollis Wright. We'll take a break. We'll be back in just a second. Stay with us.
Thank you for watching The Attorneys each Sunday night, where we come to your living room to provide free legal advice in a confidential, off-air setting. Unfortunately, with the number of calls, texts, and emails that come in during the show, we can't always get to everything. But know this, Hollis Wright is open all week long. You call us at 844-LAW-TALK and we're going to answer your question for free. Thank you for watching The Attorneys, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you soon.
If this place could talk, it wouldn't. It would sing and celebrate all of our stories of addiction recovery, victory, and community. This is Bradford Health Services. It all changes here.
So good to have you still with us. You are watching The Attorneys, and we are talking about college crimes as we get back into that, because we don't have a lot of time left. We still have some things we want to unpack.
All right, let's talk about DUIs, because I know that's still a pretty prevalent deal. Obviously, as you mentioned, Uber and some of the rideshare stuff has dissipated the number of potential claims out there. But the question that people still want to know is, if they are pulled over for a DUI, do they blow, do they not blow when they get to the police department?
That's always the question. I get that so many times when I go speak at these fraternities and sororities, and in my opinion, is never blow. I hold tight to the right not to incriminate yourself. And I don't know what it is like, Art, when you go out, or Josh, when y'all go out, but if I'm usually having a pretty good time, number one, I try, with Uber and Joyride, there's just no reason to ever get behind the wheel. But I know when I usually go out, I don't need to be behind the wheel, and I sure heck don't need to be blowing in a police officer's PBT or a Drager at the jail, because I might put up a number that I won't be proud of.
So you raised something. The PBT is actually, people may not recognize this, the PBT is an indicator the officer can use at the scene.
Correct.
That is not admissible, correct? 100%. And he can ask you to blow in that.
Right.
And then that gives him an indication, and by the way, it would also tip you off as an indication whether or not you pass or not.
100%. The PBTs, it's kind of been expanded in days. Before, it wasn't even really considered in a courtroom setting. The courts have now allowed the PBT to be discussed as probable cause.
Okay.
It can't be used as evidence, and obviously you're familiar with the scientific boundaries on evidence and the burdens. And so PBT can't be used for that, but it can be discussed for a reason for probable cause. And so the main forensics analysis that we talk about when people say, do I blow or not blow, is going to be what we call the Draeger. And that's usually a scientifically sensitive machine that's kept at a jail, and that people are given an opportunity to blow or not blow in that machine. And a lot of times officers will say, well, if you don't blow, you're going to have suspend your license up to a year. Well, I can tell you, if you've been out having a good time and you do blow, it's going to get suspended anyway. So, I hold true to the principle and the constitutional right of not giving evidence against yourself.
Yeah.
And so, if everybody asks me when I'm out and about social settings, or even when I'm speaking of college fraternities, my recommendation is to never blow.
But Josh, sometimes things happen. You do get in trouble. You are found guilty. And then you want a second chance. What kind of programs are there out there that can help you in that situation?
100%. And that's where I've kind of carved, my experience and expertise in what I do. I've spent 5 years as a prosecutor giving those second chances, and I know kind of what it takes to get those second chances offered to you. And now that I've been doing this 18, 19 years, that's kind of the thing that people come to me for, is how do I make this go away? How do I make this disappear? And again, our court system has come a long way from just a straight up punitive court system that we've had. And it hadn't been that long. If you think roughly back maybe 17, 18 years ago, there was no way to get out of a DUI if you did blow and had that over .08. There was just no remedy. And since that time, we've come with diversion programs. We've come with what we call guilty plea set-asides that we use a lot in district court, where you'll enter that guilty plea, but it'll be held and you'll be given an opportunity to complete some conditions or some things. Could be some classes that you go through for substance and alcohol education. And then obviously community service work, and that's a big part of what I enjoy about our judges in Tuscaloosa is they really involve community service work in some of the things that they do to earn that second chance. I'm a judge in the city of Utah, municipal court. And I try to do a lot of incorporating community service work into those second chances. And so I'm well versed in that, not just as a former prosecutor, as a defense attorney, but also as the judge, to definitely, if the person is a person who deserves that second chance, to give them that opportunity to have that second chance.
Now, I know we talked a lot about college crimes, and we've kind of used some humor to talk about some of this stuff. These are significant issues in the lives of families that deal in college, and they get to guys like Josh, but you also handle much more serious criminal-related matters that may not be college-related matters, that are felony-related and drug convictions and abuse and murder and all the things that you handle on a daily basis. That's something you do, I'm assuming, daily in your criminal courts.
100%. And sometimes there are just really sad instances that we do, but. I've handled every charge, every crime that you could possibly imagine. Even either through my days as a prosecutor or my years as a defense attorney, and that's kind of where I make my bread and butter on a day to day. And no matter if it is that small violation, ticketable offense, or a misdemeanor, or if it is something as bad as a manslaughter, and I know with what you do for a living, there's a lot of times that there's wrecks that involve DUIs and things like that nature, and I've had one or two here recently, and it's just super sad. But what I can tell you is much like you, Josh, is when I take that case, no matter if it's a violation or a misdemeanor or a serious felony like a manslaughter, number one, I treat them like my own, and I do everything I can to help them. And that's all we can ask for is what we do for a living as attorneys.
So you're in Tuscaloosa, this is your guy. This is who you're going to. He can handle it all from top to bottom. Good man. Thank you for being
Always
on.
good to be
Great
here.
job. Great job.
Love it when he stops by. We love it when you stop by. Join us next week again for The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.